Morning. I, K. Parmeshwari, PGT English of Kendra Vidyalaya Kankir, Chhattisgarh, is here to present a lesson, The Third Level by Jack Finney. A brief introduction and background to the situation. Now, during the lockdown period, what are you experiencing here? And what were you experiencing before the lockdown period? Let us have a glance. During the lockdown period, we are not having any tension, we are totally free, we are relaxing, and no time bound to complete the work. We work at our own ease. Whereas before the lockdown period, we were quite tensed. Maybe we had to rush to the school, be in time, quite worried if we have not completed the homework. Of course, it was a hectic schedule, and someone was always behind you, either the parents or teachers or friends, because in this competitive world, it is a must that we have to be on the run. The central theme of this story is the modern world was full of fear, tension, and worries. The third level provided Charlie an exit from it, and Charlie escapes from reality, saying that there is a third level that is existing, and he meets a psychiatrist, but his wife Louisa is worried. The third level. Let us have an introduction to it. The third level is written by Jack Finney. There are two levels at the Grand Central Station, New York, but Charlie, the protagonist of the story, asserts that there is third level also. He uses the third level to escape from the unpleasant life of New York to the pleasant life of Galesburg, Illinois. Now we find that Grand Central Station is a world famous landmark in Midtown Manhattan. Is not simply a transportation hub but also a shopping, dining and cultural destination. Now we go to the lesson. The presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven and Hartford railroads will swear on a stack of timetables that there are only two. But I say there are three because I have been on the third level of the Grand Central Station. Yes, I have taken the obvious step. I talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine, among others. I told him about the third level at Grand Central Station, and he said it was a waking dream wish fulfillment. He said I was unhappy, that made my wife kind of mad, but he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it, and that I just want to escape. Well, who doesn't? Everybody I know wants to escape, but they don't wander down into any third level at Grand Central Station. Now we find that the writer says that he, of course, has had been to the third level of the Grand Central Station. He has taken obvious step, but his psychiatrist friend is not ready to agree. When the writer said that there is a third level at the Grand Central Station, he said it was a waking dream wish fulfillment. What does it mean? Maybe the protagonist is just trying to escape from the reality world. That is what the psychiatrist meant to say. He said, I was unhappy. Yes, the psychiatrist meant that he was unhappy and he had gone mentally to another world. So this statement or this situation made his wife kind of mad. Of course, the wife would be worried if the husband has gone mad. But he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it. Now, it is this reason You feel insecure in this world, the rush, you're not able to cope up with the work. With this, he wants to escape from it, and it was just an escape he wanted. Well, who doesn't want to escape? Now we find that everyone I know wants to escape, but they don't wander down into any third level at Grand Central Station. So it is a reality that whenever we are stressed, when we are not able to cope up, when we want some sort of relaxation, if we are able to move from one place to the other, it's possible. Otherwise, mentally, we think about something different so that we are not continuing with the stress. And after some time, we get back to the normal routine. Next. But that's the reason, he said, and my friends all agreed. Everything points to it. They claimed, my stamp collecting, for example, that's a temporary refuge from reality. Well, maybe my grandfather didn't need any refuge from reality. Things were pretty nice and peaceful in his day, from all I hear, and he started my collection. It's a nice collection too, blocks of 4 of practically every US issue, first day covers, and so on. President Roosevelt collected stamps too, you know. What does the writer say? He says that stamp collecting is again a habit, or we develop it. It's again a temporary refuge from reality. And he feels that during his grandfather's time, they lived in a very peaceful place. Things were very nice and peaceful in his day. That is, he had come to heard about it. Now he is taking more support from others, saying that even President Roosevelt collected stamps. Of course. Anyway, here's what happened at Grand Central Station. One night last summer, I worked late at the office. I was in a hurry to get uptown to my apartment, so I decided to take the subway from Grand Central because it's faster than the bus. You find that the protagonist is saying that he was late from work and he was rushing to his apartment, so he just decided to take the subway from Grand Central and then move faster. Now I don't know why this should have happened to me. I'm just an ordinary guy named Charlie, 31 years old, and I was wearing a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. I passed a dozen men who looked just like me, and I wasn't trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get home to Loisia, my wife. We find that the narrator is Charlie. He's 31 years old and he describes his costume, and he says that all the other people were also wearing dress like him. And it is sure that we dress up as per the trend. Nobody goes to the old fashion. And here he says that whatever dress he was wearing, and almost all of them were putting on the dress just like that, and he is supporting his ideas. And I wasn't trying to escape from anything. He is assuring that he was not trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get home to Loisia, my wife. So he is just rushing home to meet his wife. Next, I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level where you take trains like the 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level where the suburban trains leave from, ducked into an arched doorway heading for the subway, and got lost. That's easy to do. I have been in and out of Grand Central hundreds of times, but I'm always bumping into new doorways and strays and corridors. Once I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of Roosevelt Hotel. Another time I came up in an office building on 46th Street, 3 blocks away. Now we find that Charlie says that he turned into Grand Central, and as he walked, he went to the first level where the trains were like the 20th century. Then he goes to the second level where the suburban trains leave. And then as he was walking, there was some arched doorway heading for the subway, and he got lost. That's easy to do. I have been in and out of Grand Central 100 times. Now, this always happens in a busy city where every day you keep walking, and suddenly you find that in lot of when people are there and the crowd is more, you try to sneak through some and you get lost to some other place. And from there again you manage, thinking that oh, it's not a problem, and you come. So here he says that he also had the same thing. He got lost. That's easy to do. I have been in and out of the Grand Central hundreds of times. So he says it's not the first time or the second time where he can say he's lost, but hundreds of times he had been there. Once I got into a tunnel about. So he says that he had an experience of getting into a tunnel which was a mile long and came out in the lobby of Roosevelt Hotel. Another time in the office building of 46th Street, 3 blocks away. Sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and staircases like roots. This also might happen that since many people are coming and going and the crowd is increasing day by day, they must have even expanded it. So in the rush, Charlie had not noticed it. So it might be that it had expanded and he had not noticed. So he says that it's crowded and he got lost. The first level he entered, then he went to the second level, and there he lost his track. Next, there's probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about feeling its way under the city right now, on its way to Times Square, and maybe another to Central Park. And maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got into. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. So you see, whenever you meet a psychiatrist, it's a must that you're supposed to speak everything, whatever is in your mind, so that he arrives at some conclusion. So here he is hiding some facts. Now he says that there's probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about feeling its way under the city right now. So maybe there was a subway where nobody used it for a long time and it was lying, or it was a subway which had a level where it was constructed long back and at present it's not in use. We do not know what it is, but he says that nobody knows. There was a long tunnel that nobody knows about feelings its way under the city right now, on its way to Times Square, and maybe another to Central Park. And maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way to escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got into. So he has just entered into the tunnel. He's saying he calls it as an escape. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. So he never told about this idea to his psychiatrist friend. Next, the corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downward, and I thought that was wrong, but I kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps, and I didn't pass a soul. So you find that he is passing through the corridor, angling left, is informing the directions and slanting down, and he did not find anyone. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps, and I didn't pass a soul. So it's very clear that Charlie was all alone walking in the corridor. Then I heard the sort of hollow roar ahead, that means open space and people talking. People were talking, open space. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of stairs and came out on the third level at Grand Central Station. So somehow he says that he took a sharp left, and then as he went down, a sort of flight of stairs were there, and then he came to the third level. Now he says now he has reached the third level at Grand Central Station. Now you see how he describes. For just a moment I thought I was back on the second level, but I saw the room was smaller. There were fewer ticket windows and train gates, and the information booth at the center was wood and old looking, and the man in the booth wore a green eye shade and long black sleeve protectors. Now he is describing the dress code. The windows, the ticket counter was all wooden. Maybe in olden days they had only wooden ticket counters. Almost all of them were made up of wood. And he says that the man was wearing a long black sleeve protectors. The lights were dim and sort of flickering. Then I saw why they were open flame gas lights. So at the present day we did not have open flame gas lights. These were all used only in the olden days. So he describes the complete scenario, informing us that it was the third level, it was not the first and the second level. Next, there were brass spittoons on the floor, and across the station a glint of light caught my eye. A man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. He snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch, and frowned. He wore a derby hat, a black 4-button suit with tiny lapels, and he had a big black handlebar moustache. Then I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like the 1890 something. I never saw so many beards, sideburns, and fancy moustache in my life. A woman walked in through the train gate. She wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high button shoes. Back of her, out on the tracks, I caught a glimpse of a locomotive, a very small Courier and Avis locomotive with a funnel-shaped track, and then I knew. Here you can just look at the pictures. What he says is a man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. Now this type of watches were worn in 1890s. So he just describing the people around him. He talks about the people sitting and the spittoons on the floor, and across the station he finds that the man pulling the gold watch from his vest pocket and looking at the time and his frowning face. And then he talks about his dress, his moustache. You can find that your dressing style, your hairstyle, all of them depend on the trending areas. So you in the present 21st century you cannot find anyone dressed up like how in 1700 or 1800 people were dressed up. So he gives a glimpse of the men, the women dressed up, and he talks about the locomotive train which was coming. So these things all he wants to prove that it is he has been to the third level and the complete environment is totally different from the present modern world. Next, to make sure, I walked over to a newsboy and glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. It was the World, and the World hasn't been published for years. The lead story said something about President Cleveland. I have found that front page since in the public library files and it was printed June 11, 1894. I turned toward the ticket windows, knowing that here on the third level at Grand Central, I could buy tickets that would take Louisa and me anywhere in the United States we wanted to go in the year 1894, and I wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. Now we find that the paper, the date of the newspaper, he says that the World was not published for a long time. Now, but this boy was having the World newspaper and it was very clearly written as June 11, 1894. Now he is supporting that he was in the third level and he had traveled back with this time, and he says, talks about President Cleveland. Now President Cleveland, he was an American politician and lawyer who was the 22nd and 24th President of the United States, the only president in American history to serve 2 non-consecutive terms in office. So you find that he has traveled back, and he says he supports it with the statement that he has seen the newspaper. And now he says he found the ticket counter and now he is going to take the tickets, and this would take him anywhere in United States, and he wants 2 tickets even for him and his wife where they both can go to Galesburg, Illinois. Next, have you ever been there? It's a wonderful town still, with big old frame houses, huge lawns, and tremendous trees whose branches meet overhead and roof the streets. And in 1894, summer evenings were twice as long, and people sat out on their lawns, the men smoking cigars and talking quietly, the women waving palm leaf fans with their fireflies all around in a peaceful world. To be back there with the First World War still 20 years off and World War II over 40 years in the future, I wanted 2 tickets for that. Here you find that he is describing the house, the environment, talking about the old frame houses, the huge lawns, and the men and women relaxing. All these things shows that he wanted to have a peaceful life. What he had, maybe he had heard or he had seen, he feels that that would have been a wonderful life if he had gone to Galesburg. Now he wishes to live in a spacious place. Of course, in the modern world, we find that we all live in small houses and we don't have much of the area around us. We are having all the facilities and we live. But here he says that the summer evenings were twice as long. He talks about the people sitting out on their lawns. So people coming out, sitting it on the lawns, those days maybe they had enough space around their houses and they enjoyed. So he wants to be in that atmosphere or environment. Next, the clerk figured the fare. He glanced at my fancy headband, but he figured the fare, and I had enough for 2 coach tickets one way. But when I counted out the money and looked up, the clerk was staring at me. He nodded at the bills. "They ain't money, mister," he said. "And if you are trying to skin me, you won't get very far." And he glanced at the cash drawer beside him. Of course, the money was old style bills, half again as big as the money we use nowadays, and different looking. I turned away and got out fast. There's nothing nice about jail, even in 1894. Now, Charlie says that he had the currency and that he mentions it's or specifies it as he had enough money for one way. Now, again, it shows that he doesn't want to come back to the modern world. He had enough only for one way, and he handed over the currency to the ticket person who was giving the clerk, and he finds that he just looks and he says, "If you don't have enough money, you will be punished." So the cashier, as he warned, and he understood that if he is punished, it would be very terrible. So to avoid disturbance, he just walked away quickly. And that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. Next day, during lunch hour, I drew $300 out of the bank, nearly all we had, and brought old style currency. That really worried my psychiatrist friend. You can buy old money at almost any coin dealers, but you have to pay a premium. My $300 bought less than 200 in old style bills, but I didn't care. Eggs were 13 cents a dozen in 1894. Now Charlie says that the next day during the lunch hour he just went out and he managed to get $300 out of the bank. And the psychiatrist friend is just insisting that he can get old currency from wherever he likes. But the thing is, you have to pay some premium. It's all available, but you have to some premium. Now he says that he is comparing the present day's currency with the old ones, as well as he is valuing the commodities. Now what does Charlie wants to say in this particular point of his conversation or speech? He is asserting that it's true that he is living. When he assured that he had managed to get the old currency, this again worried the psychiatrist friend, and he say he is valuing money. That is very common, that if you see maybe today whatever we are purchasing for 10 rupees, maybe in the olden days 100 years before it would have been fraction money, even 1 rupee or less than 1 rupee. So it's very common, and he is valuing even the money. But I have never again found the corridor that leads to the third level at the Grand Central Station, although I have tried often enough. Loisia was pretty worried when I told her all this and didn't want me to look for the third level anymore. And after a while I stopped. I went back to my stamps, but now we are both looking every weekend, because now we have proof that the third level is still there. My friend Sam Vanier disappeared. Nobody knew where, but I sort of suspected, because Sam's a city boy and I used to tell him about Galesburg. I went to school there, and he always said he liked the sound of the place, and that's where he is, all right, in 1894. Now the sorry state of mind is that Charlie is not able to find the third level. Now he is not able to see the corridor on the third level. Now he is worried. Now he's saying that Lauzia was pretty worried. His wife naturally she'll be worried when he's talking about third level which never existed in Grand Central Station, and he claims that it was existing. He had gone there and now he is not able to find out. So he says that he went back to his stamp collections, and then he talks about his friend Sam Weiner who had disappeared. Now we find that stamp collection is a very good hobby, and you start collecting the stamps and you have the first day cover. All those things are there with you. It's good. But now you see the same thing has taken him to the time and space behind, backwards. Now he says that his friend Sam is disappearing. He was a very smart city boy. Normally city boys don't like to go to countryside, but he was a city boy and he had been hearing about Galesburg, whatever Charlie had been narrating. And maybe that's the reason why he has gone. So here he says, because one night fuzzing with the stamp collection, I found, well, do you know what a first day cover is? So he's explaining what is a first day cover. When a new stamp is issued, stamp collectors buy some and use them to mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of sale, and the postmark proves the date. The envelope is called the first day cover. They are never opened. You just put a blank paper in the envelope because you're writing it to your own self. So it's just to have the postmark seal. You just have it with you and nothing is there. And you find that when he was seeing the stamp collection, he came across this first day cover. Next, that night among my oldest first day covers, I found one that shouldn't have been there. But there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to my grandfather at his home in Galesburg. That's what the address on the envelope said, and it had been there since July 1894. The postmark showed that, yet I didn't remember it at all. The stamp was a 6-cent dull brown with a picture of President Garfield. Naturally, when the envelope came to Granddad in the mail, it went right into his collection and stayed there till I took it out and opened it. So he says that it was a first day cover, so it had just gone into the stamp collection book and nobody had opened it. Now Charlie tries to open. Now is it really that there was a letter inside? He opens and he sees. The paper inside wasn't blank. He says normally the first day covers are always blank, but now it was not blank. It was written 941 Willard Street, Galesburg, Illinois, July 18, 1894. Charlie. I got to wishing that you were right. Then I got to believing you were right. And Charlie, it's true. I found the third level. I have been here 2 weeks, and right now, down the street at the Daily's, someone is playing a piano, and they're all out on the front porch singing, seeing Nellie home. And I'm invited over for lemonade. Come on back, Charlie and Loisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It's worth it, believe me. The notice is signed as Sam. What does this letter notify? Does Charlie intentionally open this first day cover? Because normally it is never opened. Had he opened it and he had himself written and put the cover inside the envelope, written the letter and put it inside the envelope? Was it a means of escape? Did the third level really exist when both the psychiatrist and his wife was not ready to accept the idea that the third level existed in the Grand Central? Did it really exist? Was there a corridor which led and unused by people because of old things that existed, and they had improvised and they had come to the first and second level where it was good? He had entered into a wrong place, and then he started going into the dream world, and then to prove that it was very nice soothing when he recollected his grandfather's days. It was nice. All those memories of his childhood had cropped up, and he felt that the present day is full of worries, and those days they had a pretty good life. Is it that has made him understand that the third level existed and it was very peaceful? We do not know. Please think it over and see if Charlie could get into the third level.